Well, the CBC wasn't done with him yet. They came back a second time asking him about a particular vote he made 4 years ago. Here, take a listen to that.
Question, but women's rights advocates will tell you that that's the kind of bill that tries to open up cracks, to reopen the debate on abortion. How can you reassure people who may think that? Answer. That was a bill on criminal sentencing, actually. And I have a completely clear track record on social issues as an MP. That's not the case for Justin Trudeau, because in 2013, I was the first of only 18 Conservatives who voted for a bill for the LGBT community. Mr. Trudeau missed the vote for a fundraising activity for the Ontario Liberal Party. But I have a clear record, but that Mr. Trudeau does not.
Okay, so 2 questions in his debut press conference about his support for a particular law 4 years ago. The bill failed, by the way. It was an opposition bill. It did not pass. But take a look at how the Parliament of Canada itself, this is from Parliament's website, describes the law that Erin O'Toole voted for, the law that French CBC is so obsessed with that they asked not 1 but 2 questions about it on Erin O'Toole's first day on the job. I quote, "This enactment amends the criminal code to make it an offense to cause injury or death to a preborn child while committing or attempting to commit an offense against a pregnant woman, and to add pregnancy as an aggravating circumstance for the purpose of sentencing." That's what this law is. It's not an anti-abortion law. It's not a pro-life law in terms of in any way inhibiting the mom's power to abort the child. You heard from Erin O'Toole. He's 100% pro-choice, pro-abortion, with or without any reason. Like he's Jagmeet Singh on that stuff, and he's proud of it, and that's who the Conservatives voted for. But even that isn't enough, because he dared to vote for a bill that said if some robber or mugger on the street, God forbid, punches a pregnant woman and injures the child or even kills it, that is an offense, and that goes to sentencing. Believe it or not, Justin Trudeau and the Jagmeet Singhs of the world voted against that bill because Erin O'Toole voted to protect the baby in an assault. That's called by the CBC being too pro-life and disqualifying. And the CBC is already campaigning against him. Do you see my point? The CBC, they have the most pro-left-wing social policy guy they could ever find in Erin O'Toole. He boasts about how he was the first Conservative to go all the way down the road. All right, that's who he is. But that's not enough for the CBC. They won't let it go because he's a Conservative. He pointed out in his answer that Justin Trudeau himself didn't vote for that bill. He just found himself at a party fundraiser that day. I want to show you one more thing, and I got this directly from the O'Toole campaign. Here, take a look at this tweet. Erin O'Toole did an interview with CBC Radio, and the CBC published their exchange, but according to the Erin O'Toole campaign, the CBC deleted this exchange from the interview. So this was part of the interview. It was a question asked by the CBC to Erin O'Toole about the CBC, and it was deleted, edited out of the interview before it was broadcast. Take a listen.
Mr. O'Toole, I can't have you on the CBC without asking you about your policy for the CBC. You have some policy plans that includes defunding English television and news network, though you say you will not touch CBC Radio, which this show runs on. Why would you seek to reduce the number of journalism outlets in the country when the industry is widely seen as being in a bit of a crisis? And we do have the rise of very discredited news sources online. So why get rid of ones that Canadians have grown up knowing they can trust?
Well, I won't get rid of, as you said, radio. And what we want to do with English television is privatize, David. So I think what we don't need is Canadians spending millions of dollars to create the Family Feud Canada edition. Is that where taxpayers' money really should be going? And
that's not the total of the CBC television output, though. I mean, that's a very selective example.
Well, the ratings show that very few Canadians watch CBC. And so why should 100% of taxpayers subsidize it? So it should be more of a public broadcaster model, David, with less commercials, less competition. That's why I like CBC Radio. As you know, I listen to this show regularly and have for years. It doesn't compete with the Shaw and the Choruses of the world. So it's time for a modernization. I also think CBC Digital has helped undermine private newspapers and other things, and Trudeau's creating a $600 million media fund for that. Why should government interference then lead to a private sector media bailout? It's dumb policy again. So I think it's time you will see a nimble and very effective CBC, because it will get to its public broadcaster roots. And I think in an age of streaming where all of our kids are watching Netflix throughout this pandemic, we don't need to be doing things the way they were done 50 years ago just for the sake of the status quo. I think it's time for a shakeup, and that's what I'm offering.
Okay. Erin O'Toole, good luck with the rest of the campaign. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, David.
Why didn't they broadcast that? It was a question asked by the CBC and answered by Erin O'Toole. Why would they censor that? Why did they delete that from the record? That's like what Stalin did. He would edit out people from a historical photograph if they became inconvenient. There's hubris, there's arrogance, there's a lack of self-awareness in the question, oh, how can you allow online news sources that are untrustworthy? We've got to stay with the trustworthy CBC. There was a lot of condescending snobbery and self-unawareness there, but the fact that Erin O'Toole gave an answer they didn't like, they simply hit the delete button. That's the CBC, that's the media party. Erin O'Toole's first day on the job, most of the questions in French, most of the questions attack-oriented, no questions about communist China, no questions about getting the two Michaels back from China, no questions about banning Huawei, no questions about how to increase trade with the United States, no questions about our civil liberties during the pandemic, but lots of questions about LGBTQ2+. Even though Erin O'Toole is already all the way down there, the CBC plan a total war against him because he's a conservative. That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.